They say you never really know people until tragedy strikes. I learned this truth the hard way, flat on my back in a hospital bed, listening to my in-laws plot to cut off my medical care. The insurance policy is obviously fraudulent. Margaret Whitney's voice drifted through my partially open door. Emily must have forged Robert's signature after the accident. She always was crafty about money. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the ventilator tube made speech impossible. 3 weeks after the car accident that left me temporarily paralyzed, I could only lie there, trapped in an unresponsive body, as my husband's family tried to destroy me. The irony was bitter. Robert and I had gotten that life insurance policy together 5 years ago, right after our wedding. Just in case, he'd said, always the practical one. We need to protect each other. Now Robert was dead, killed instantly in the same accident that shattered my spine, and his family was trying to deny me the protection he'd insisted on. The policy pays out $5 million, William Whitney, my father-in-law, responded. That's Whitney family money. It should go to the foundation, not some gold digger who married into the family. Gold digger. I almost laughed, but it would have triggered the ventilator alarm. They'd conveniently forgotten that I was a successful neurosurgeon before marrying Robert, that I'd insisted on a prenup to protect my own assets. Dr. Anderson says she might recover partial mobility, Margaret continued. Imagine the drain on family resources, the rehabilitation costs alone. Not our problem, William dismissed. Once we prove the insurance policy is fake, she'll have to rely on her own means. Let her family deal with it. My family. Mom was a retired teacher, Dad a small-town accountant. They'd already sold their house to help with initial medical costs, believing the insurance would reimburse them. The Whitneys knew this. They'd watched my parents make the sacrifice, probably smirking behind their designer masks about the futility of it all. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I wasn't as helpless as I appeared. The accident had taken my mobility, not my mind, and in the long hours lying here, forced to listen to their schemes, I'd been planning. They didn't know about the video Robert and I had made the day we signed the insurance papers. A silly thing at the time, we'd been playing with his new phone, recording random moments of our life together. For posterity, he joked, filming us both signing the documents, so our grandkids can see how boring adulting is. That video was still in our shared cloud storage, along with 5 years of other evidence of our life together, including emails discussing the policy, bank records showing premium payments, even photos from the insurance agent's office. They also didn't know that while I couldn't speak, I could communicate. My night nurse, Maria Garcia, had realized I was conscious and aware 3 days ago. She taught me to blink, once for yes, twice for no, a simple code that had become my lifeline. Mrs. Whitney, she'd asked one night, checking my vitals. Do you understand what's happening? Blink. Do you want me to help you? Blink. Are they lying about the insurance? Blink. Maria had become my secret ally, sneaking in her phone so I could blink out messages to my best friend, Claire Matthews, a medical malpractice attorney who'd fought the Whitneys before. The Whitneys thought they were being clever, visiting during regular staff changes when Maria wasn't around. They didn't realize every word they spoke was being recorded on the phone hidden under my pillow. Your parents called again. Margaret's voice pulled me back to the present. So persistent, asking about the insurance payout, as if we'd let them take advantage. Take advantage? My parents, who'd mortgaged their future to save my life while the Whitneys plotted to cut off my care. I felt the familiar rage build, but forced myself to remain calm. The monitors would betray any spike in my vital signs. I've spoken to Harrison, William said smugly. He's prepared to testify that Robert never signed any such policy. As his personal accountant for 20 years, his word carries weight. Of course Harrison would lie for them. The Whitneys probably own him, just like they own half the town's elite. But they didn't own Maria, who was silently recording every word while pretending to check equipment in the corner. They didn't own Claire, who was already building a case that would destroy their carefully constructed facade. And they certainly didn't own me. I lay there, letting them plot, letting them think they were in control. They had no idea that their own words would be their undoing. Later that night, Maria helped me communicate with Claire through blinks and a letterboard. Check Roby Ortiz LAPTOP, I spelled out slowly. Hidden FOLDR. More pair off. Got it? Claire replied via speakerphone. The insurance company's already investigating the Whitney's claim of fraud. These recordings will help. And Emily, there's something else you should know. I blinked my acknowledgement. Robert left a letter with my office. Said to open it if anything happened to him. He knew his family might try something like this. My eyes filled with tears. Even after death, Robert was protecting me. He documented everything, Claire continued. Years of their financial manipulation, threats against previous partners, suspicious accidents involving people who opposed them. He built a case, just in case. Just in case they tried to destroy someone he loved. Oh, Robert. Even in our happiest moments, he'd known what his family was capable of. The next few days were a careful dance of preparation. While the Whitneys pushed their fraud narrative, Claire gathered evidence. Maria recorded their conversations. My doctors documented my awareness and decision-making capacity. William and Margaret grew bolder, threatening to have me transferred to a more suitable facility. A nice way of saying a place where I'd receive minimal care. They didn't realize I could hear their whispered conversations about care withdrawal and natural progression. They didn't know that every threatening word, every manipulative move was being documented. Most importantly, they didn't know that tomorrow, when they arrived with their lawyers to begin transfer proceedings, they would face not a helpless, voiceless victim, but a team ready to expose decades of Whitney family corruption. The ventilator might have silenced my voice, but it hadn't silenced the truth. And tomorrow, they would learn exactly what kind of fighter they were dealing with. You really should sign these transfer papers, Emily. Margaret Whitney's voice drooped false concern as she held up the documents. The facility we've chosen specializes in long-term care cases. I lay in my hospital bed, newly freed from the ventilator but still mostly paralyzed, watching my in-laws prepare to strip away my last defenses. The family's lawyers hovered nearby, all expensive suits and predatory smiles. They'd chosen their moment carefully, or so they thought. A Friday afternoon, regular staff away, witnesses minimal. The perfect time to pressure a vulnerable patient. What they didn't know was that every person in this room was exactly where I needed them to be. Mrs. Whitney, my voice was raspy from weeks of intubation. Before we discuss any transfers, I believe my attorney has some documents to share. Claire stepped out of the corner where she'd been quietly observing. The Whitneys' faces shifted from smug certainty to wary confusion. What attorney? William demanded. We weren't notified. Just like I wasn't notified when you tried to invalidate my insurance policy. I met his eyes steadily, when you accused me of fraud while I lay here unable to defend myself. Margaret's perfectly maintained composure cracked slightly. We don't know what you think you heard. Oh, I heard everything. I nodded to Maria, who pulled out her phone and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room, discussing their plans to cut off my care, their schemes to deny the insurance, their dismissal of my parents' sacrifice. Illegally recorded, one of their lawyers started, but Claire was already connecting her laptop to the room's large monitor. Then let's watch something recorded with full consent, she said pleasantly, from 5 years ago. The video played crystal clear, Robert and I at the insurance office, laughing as we signed the papers. Got to protect my brilliant surgeon wife, he said to the camera. Though with her salary, she probably doesn't need it. The policy was Robert's idea, I said into the stunned silence. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. Just like he wanted to make sure I had evidence of your family's other activities. William's face darkened. What are you talking about? Claire opened Robert's letter on the screen. Your son was thorough, Mr. Whitney. He documented everything. The threatened partners, the suspicious accidents, the financial manipulation. He knew exactly what you were capable of. You're bluffing. Margaret's voice shook slightly. Actually, Dr. Anderson stepped into the room. We have quite a comprehensive record, including your recent discussions about withdrawing care and forcing transfers against medical advice. The hospital's legal team followed him in, along with 2 police detectives. Insurance fraud is a serious crime, one detective noted. So it was conspiracy to deny medical care. And when we started investigating, we found some very interesting patterns in the Whitney family history. What followed was like watching a carefully built house of cards collapse. The Whitneys' lawyers, sensing disaster, began distancing themselves. William and Margaret's threats turned to pleas, then to desperate negotiations. But I wasn't interested in deals. Here's what's going to happen. I said, my doctor's authority returning despite my weakened state. The insurance policy will be honored, not just for me, but for my parents' reimbursement. The Whitney Foundation will establish a fund for spinal cord injury research, and you will never again try to deny someone medical care for your own financial gain. Or, Claire added pleasantly, we can let the police and insurance investigators continue their work. I'm sure the other families you've threatened over the years would be interested in coming forward. The Whitneys left in defeat, their lawyers already discussing damage control. But my battle wasn't over, it was just shifting focus. The next 6 months were a brutal regimen of physical therapy, learning to breathe fully again, fighting to regain movement in my limbs. Small victories celebrated like major triumphs. My parents moved into our house, my house now, to help with my recovery. The insurance money meant they could retire properly, focus on being supportive rather than worried about finances. Maria stayed on as my private nurse, her recorded evidence earning her a substantial whistleblower reward from the insurance company's fraud investigation. Claire's exposure of the Whitney family's practices led to more victims coming forward. The foundation's corrupt practices were revealed, leading to a complete restructuring under independent oversight. Through it all, I kept pushing forward. The prognosis had been uncertain, but I was determined to beat it. 1 year after the accident, I stood again for the first time. Shaky, supported by parallel bars, but standing. 2 years out, I walked into my first post-accident surgery. Not to operate, I wasn't ready for that level of fine motor control, but to consult. My colleagues welcomed me back with respect rather than pity. Dr. Whitney, my resident asked during rounds, should we use your research protocol for this spinal case? Dr. Carter, I corrected, having reclaimed my maiden name. And yes, but with a modification I developed during my own recovery. I turned my experience into expertise, publishing papers on spinal cord injury treatment from a uniquely informed perspective. The Whitney Foundation's mandatory research funding had actually advanced the field significantly. 3 years after the accident that was meant to break me, I stood at a podium, delivering the keynote address at a neurosurgery conference. Medical catastrophes show us who people really are, I told the audience, both the victims and those around them. We can choose to be broken by betrayal, or we can choose to build something better from the experience. My parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Maria and Claire were there too, the friends who'd become family. Even some of Robert's distant relatives who'd supported me against the Whitneys attended. Later that evening, I visited Robert's grave, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone. You knew, didn't you? I said softly. What they might do. That's why you left all that evidence, made that video, protected me even knowing you might not be here. The evening breeze stirred the flowers, carrying the scent of approaching spring. I did more than survive, I told him. I changed things, made it harder for them to hurt anyone else, built something positive from all the pain. Walking back to my car, slowly but independently, I thought about all the ways life tests us. How tragedy reveals both the worst and best in people. How sometimes the greatest strength comes not from fighting back, but from moving forward with purpose. The Whitneys had tried to silence me, thinking my paralyzed body meant a paralyzed spirit. Instead, they'd unleash a force for change they never expected. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, in every possible way.